We've had a very busy day of NHL news and rumors, and lots to recap here today. The trade talk today revolves around a variety of teams. We get some updates on the situation with Quinn Hughes in Vancouver. We're also taking a look at the Calgary Flames of Rasmus Andersson and the LA Kings with Phil Deneau. We also get some big updates on the Olympic Arena in Italy for the 2026 Olympics. Big update as well regarding the Ottawa Senators getting their new downtown arena. We have news from the waiver wire. Milan Lucic appears to be signing with a new team, and it's not in North America. All kinds of injury updates and other news, including a prospect trade between the Flyers and Lightning as well. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video. All kinds of news. Been a very, very busy news day, and we'll get into a few trade rumors like we usually do as well towards the latter part of the video. First up, though, we do have news. Another NHL veteran is calling it a career. Longtime NHL player Craig Smith, probably most known for his time as a member of the Nashville Predators, where he spent more than half, like a large chunk of his career, has announced his retirement. Craig Smith came really close to joining the small group of players, really in the grand scheme of things, to hit 1,000 NHL games. Ended up hitting 987. Oh, so close. But Smith had a pretty solid career. Scored 220 goals, put up 452 points in that time frame. Like I said, the large chunk of his career spent in Nashville. But towards the end, also had some stops along the way with the Boston Bruins, the Washington Capitals briefly, Dallas Stars, and Chicago as well. So also had a chance to represent his country of the U.S. At the World Championship. So pretty successful career overall. Was a pretty steady goal scorer, I'd say. Usually pretty consistent, in that 20 goal range or so during his time with the Nashville Predators, playing mostly in their middle six. So congrats to Craig Smith on a pretty solid career, and hopefully he has success with whatever comes next for him. We also got news from the NHL waiver wire. We've seen a few scenarios like this lately where we have a player on waivers. It's not a big name at all. It's actually another player who ended up opening the season on injured reserve. So it's Jet Wu of the Vancouver Canucks. The defenseman was injured during the preseason and started the season with the Canucks on season opening injured reserve. So he's now getting close to returning. We'll need waivers to go down to I almost said Belleville, but to go down to Abbotsford in the AHL, and he will likely clear waivers considering he's been out injured the entire time. And then we'll see what comes next for him when he goes back to the American Hockey League. But some of these guys would have been through waivers earlier on, but they were injured and they can't be on waivers until they're ready to come back. So Jet Wu likely clears and gets reassigned tomorrow. They could be a few days away from getting reassigned as well, depending on exactly where he's at with his injury. But he is close, which is good news for him and for Vancouver. Another signing here today as well, or at least what appears to be a signing. Not sure if we've seen this made official yet, but NHL insiders have the details that Milan Lucic, of course, who went through an NHL and an AHL tryout recently without landing a firm guaranteed contract, is heading over to Europe. He's taken his services overseas. Milan Lucic is reportedly ready to sign a contract in the UK in the EIHL. So we will see where that goes. I know there's definitely leagues in Europe that appear to have, I wouldn't call myself an expert in all the European leagues, but I would think that hockey in Sweden, Finland, Germany would all be probably higher level than this. But it is a league that we've seen players play in and try to advance themselves and whatnot. So we'll see. I'm not sure what this means for his future. Obviously, it's a place to play hockey. It's a place for him to earn a paycheck. And as far as him getting back to the NHL, I'm not really sure. I don't think there's much of a chance of that happening, but you just never know. So best of luck to Milan Lucic over in the UK. Now, a bunch of injury updates here today as well. We'll start with one of the more significant ones, the Utah Mammoth, who thought they dodged a bullet not long ago with Logan Cooley, and they did after taking a knee-on-knee situation against the St. Louis Blues last week. Ended up not missing much time at all. It ended up becoming just basically like a bad Charlie horse and was able to return. So he missed that particular game where the injury happened, but obviously wasn't out long-term, even though it looked like it could be a serious injury. But then he comes back and he's hurt, and this time he's out again. Obviously, this time, though, was against the Canucks on Friday night. He crashed into the crease net area and ended up hitting his leg pretty hard on the goalpost. Looks like it's pretty much, I would say it's pretty likely a knee injury based on where the contact was made. But yeah, it looked like he hit it really hard, and they didn't give a lot of details, just that he's going to be considered out indefinitely, which is usually what they say when they know it's not going to be short term and that they don't have a more firm timeline just yet. So we'll have to wait for further updates. But Logan Cooley, who was having a really good start to his season, has now had two pretty serious situations here in the past week. One of them, I think you can say he dodged a bullet. This one, it appears as though not so much. So hopefully he's not out too long, because he's a big part of that team. And like I said, another young player having a good season. I'm not sure if he really had a great chance of making Team USA for the Olympics, but I know based on how he started the year, I thought they should at least put him in the conversation. But there's a lot of more experienced guys probably ahead of him that would get the nod first. Now, speaking of guys that are likely heading to the Olympics, some other injury updates. A couple in Boston, including a couple of their top players. Defenseman Charlie McAvoy, of course, we know had a puck to the face, had a jaw injury. We talked about how he's been out an extended time and also lost a ton of weight because of the jaw injury. He had to go quite an extended number of days without eating solid foods, and he lost 20 pounds in the process. The update today is now being able to resume skating for a few days, which is good. I've been able to get back into the gym. He has gained back about half of the weight that he's lost, so his strength and conditioning is getting closer to being, he's not 100% yet, but he's getting closer, making good progress, and the hope is he won't be out too much longer. David Pastrnak, who's been out for a little bit as well, also getting close. Both players are traveling with the Bruins on their upcoming road trip with the hopes and intentions that they'll be able to play at some point on the trip. So that will be a major boost for them when they get those guys back. The Bruins have been doing okay in their absence, but certainly you want those guys in your lineup whenever remotely possible. The Lightning, of course, tonight, they were the Amazon Prime game against the Toronto Maple Leafs in Toronto. They did get Nikita Kucherov and Braden Point back. Unfortunately, they did get shut out by Dennis Hildeby in the Toronto Maple Leafs and dropped that game after a late empty net goal from Austin Matthews. The Leafs pick up a 2-0 victory, and the Lightning have now dropped a couple of straight games, including not scoring a goal in a little while. So the offense has suddenly gone dry in Tampa after a long stretch of high-octane offense. So we'll see if they can get things back on track here, but a couple of games in a row where they're not quite happy with the results. Still hanging around in first place, but that could change by the end of the night with some of the other games kind of taking place. But again, in the Atlantic Division, it's still really, really tight. There's only a 4-point separation between first and seventh. That's how tight it is. So it's every point right now is critical, as Tampa was the team that started to separate and run away a little bit, and now they've kind of slowed down and hit a roadblock where they've lost a few in a row, and it's tightened up here yet again. So if you win a few in a row or you lose a few in a row, it can drastically impact your spot in the standings for sure. A few other injury updates. Connor Hellebuyck started skating as well for the Winnipeg Jets, which is great news. Unfortunately, it doesn't really get him super close to coming back, because we know he had a knee procedure. He's still not super close to returning, but the fact he's skating is certainly a very positive sign. And they've also made a change for their backup right now with Hellebuyck being out. They did have Thomas Milic up from the AHL, from the Manitoba Moose, to work with Eric Comrie. Milic has had his struggles, so they've sent him back to the American Hockey League, and they've recalled Dom DiVincentis. So he'll have an opportunity to back up Comrie here in Hellebuyck's absence, and I'm sure at some point he'll get a game, and we'll see. But the Jets have certainly not having a great early part of the year so far. After Hellebuyck's injury, they certainly look like a team that's kind of struggling to find and get back to their identity. The Panthers today have returned Jack Devine to the American Hockey League, and the Canucks also were able to get back Nils Hoglander. Hoglander's been out since the beginning of the year, so he is supposed to make his season debut tonight as the Canucks are battling the Detroit Red Wings. The St. Louis Blues also today recalled Hugh McGinn, and the Blackhawks sent Sam Rinzel and Landon Slaggert both to the AHL. Slaggard wasn't a shock, but Rinzel kind of was. Opened some eyes for sure today when that was announced, but it also seems probably pretty appropriate after a couple of back-to-back, you could say, embarrassing blowout losses for the Chicago Blackhawks, who prior to that had made a lot of progress and were actually having a pretty decent season. That, some of their young defenders, like Rinzel, maybe just need a little bit of a confidence boost and a little bit of a reset, rather than scratch him at the NHL level and get him watching from the press box. Maybe it makes more sense for him to go down a level, play a couple of games at least, get his confidence back. I'm sure he won't be down there too long before they recall him, because otherwise a lot of us expected him to be a bit more of a mainstay. But after some struggles, maybe that's what's best for him. We will see. We also had a prospect trade today, pretty minor overall, but the Lightning and the Flyers made a swap. The Philadelphia Flyers traded Ethan Sampson to the Lightning in exchange for Roman Schmidt. They're both 22-year-old prospect defensemen in their final years of their entry-level contracts. Neither player's obviously been able to make it so far. A fresh start might be what's needed in both scenarios to try to see if they get a better opportunity here. But really nothing earth-shattering at all. Two 22-year-old prospect defensemen looking for a better chance to progress their careers, getting a change of scenery. An update as well on the Olympics. Of course, we know the arena not being ready has been a fairly hot topic of conversation here in the last couple of weeks. And we found out today that the Olympic arena is not scheduled to be completed until February the 2nd. That's cutting her awfully close. So the fact that it's going to be so late, to me, that says that they're not going to be able to have any other events prior to the Olympics. The women's tournament will open prior to the men's at the Olympic Games in Italy. And I believe the women's tournament, it starts I think it's within the week after that. So they were supposed to have events there in January to try to test everything out, make sure the ice was good. And as we've heard, the NHL is not really pulling out of the games here. That doesn't appear to be in danger, but the PA has made it pretty clear as well that the utmost concern for them is the players' safety. And that means that they have a safe place to conduct their games. So obviously if the ice is horrible and there's a chance of injury and different things that can happen on that ice, then they're obviously really concerned about that. So we will see. I know some people have mentioned that maybe the Olympics should consider that the hockey portion of their games always takes place in North America. Now, I understand that there's going to be different places hosting, and they're going to want, obviously, to have all the events there, because that's why you want to host. But, if an NHL-based arena was, or even one of the big Europe arenas, to be honest, there's a number of great arenas in Europe where they do the Global Series and other games with a large capacity. It's got a long history. We know it's a good arena. The ice is good. Like the ones in Sweden or Germany where they've had games before. Maybe it needs to be in an existing place or something like that rather than build new arenas. It just seems crazy. But that certainly, to me, seems problematic that the arena won't be ready until February 2nd. That is cutting her awfully, awfully close. Now, speaking of arenas, we get some big updates today on a team that's been trying to get a new arena, and they've made a lot of steps completed and a lot of progress. There's definitely work to be done yet, though, to get the Ottawa Senators downtown in Ottawa with a new arena. New article today from Bruce Garriock in the Ottawa Sun talking about the fact that the Ottawa Senators are hiring a company to basically be like a lobbyist group for them to help them deal with the federal and provincial governments, to help them try to convince those governments that they should pay for part of this and that they can help with some of the funding. Now, of course, Michael Andlauer made it perfectly clear in one of the statements he gave for this that essentially he owns the hockey club, but he looks at this as the city's team, the city's arena. And when it comes to the arena, he's like, essentially, it's Ottawa's arena. And he does not have to own or be majority owner of it. And that's not important to him. The main thing is he wants his team to have the best possible scenario to get a new arena and to get into the downtown portion of the city, to take the team to the next level and to kind of revitalize that part of the city too. So certainly the group that they've hired is called Strategy Corp Inc. Like I said, they are a lobbyist firm that will engage the federal and provincial governments on behalf of the team in the NHL to try to see if they'll fund a portion of this development. Now, of course, they have some arguments to be made. It seems a little bit funny in a way because they're buying the land for $37 million. That part's been agreed to, and that should be closing sometime early in the new year from what my understanding is. But they're getting the land from the NCC, which is a government department or agency or whatever you want to call it. So like they're getting the land from the federal government, and now they're going back to them saying, okay, which they would know. Now I know the NCC is a different division, but they obviously would know plenty as far as the plans. Now, I think in a way that I think the odds are decent that they'll get some level of funding. Now, I'm not sure exactly what level Andlauer is looking for here. I don't think he's looking for them to pay all of it. But if you look at other arenas that have been agreed to in Canada, especially like the Flames, Oilers, etc., they were able to get some assistance in that respect. But I mean, obviously part of this plan is to completely revitalize the downtown portion of Ottawa. There's going to be hotel developments. There's different housing developments, and there's a lot of economic, impact in that sense. So to me, I think that they'll definitely listen and they should participate in some level. I know the Ontario provincial government does have what they call I think it's a fairly new, I think it's called Building Ontario. It's a fund that they've set aside, and they increased it this past year up to $8 billion for different projects to help build Ontario. So, if they can get some money from the province of Ontario and some money from the federal government, of course, this is based out of Ottawa being the capital, then they should be able to move forward here. But we'll see where the next steps are. But they now have an official group that they've hired that's known for being lobbyists to talk to these governments on their behalf and to see what they can negotiate in that sense. Now, on the trade front, on the rumor mill, we're going to take a look at three scenarios. We've got Calgary, Vancouver, and LA. And LA, Phil Deneau, we mentioned him yesterday. First time I've talked about Phil Deneau. Elliot Friedman did talk about his scenario further today on the 32 Thoughts podcast. He mentioned it on Saturday night on the headline segment on Hockey Night in Canada, but he went to a lot more in-depth on that scenario on the podcast, and then some other insiders have kind of made some comments as well about that on what they've heard. So basically, Phil Deneau, it sounds like it's been at least a few weeks that the Kings have been kind of kicking tires on the idea of maybe moving Deneau. A couple of reasons why is he personally, from an offensive standpoint, has struggled this year, doesn't have any goals on the season. He's never been known for being like a high offense guy. He's more of a two-way centerman, but his offensive numbers have always been better than what they are now. And clearly, the big problem in LA this year is the secondary scoring hasn't been good enough, and they're just not getting a whole lot of run support for the goalies. They've had to win a lot of really tight games. Their offensive side of their game has not been great. So they're looking to increase their secondary scoring. They have a guy in Deneau who's, at this point, struggling himself. He can be, depending on the team, a number 2, number 3 center. The center market on the trade front is a little bit thin. There's definitely teams out there that are looking. And I think the thought process with Deneau is that they're going to see if they can't consider moving him to bring in another player that might be able to give them a boost offensively. Now, based on Elliot's comments on the podcast, it kind of sounds like the team and the player both seem like maybe it's just time for a change, and that it's one of those scenarios where, new scenery, new team might benefit both sides. He is this year and one more, $5.5 million. And clearly many people still believe that he's a better player than what he's shown this year, and that maybe it's just time for a change. So we will see what happens with Phil Deneau, but definitely a player worth monitoring here in the coming weeks ahead. Calgary Flames, of course, we know are a team that's near the bottom of the standings and have a lot of interesting players that are getting a lot of attention around the league. I don't think anybody more than Rasmus Andersson, of course, because he's a pending unrestricted free agent. A lot of the other guys with the Flames that are getting a lot of attention are veterans, and they have term under contract, so they're not players, for the most part at least, that the Flames absolutely have to move. Like Blake Coleman, Nazem Kadri, they're going to get attention. Teams are going to check in. They're struggling. They know there's teams out there that would like to get them on their team, and that's all fine and dandy, but they don't feel obligated to move them. I think it's fair to say that they feel like they can be patient, and if they do make a move, that they can get the absolute best deal possible. When it comes to Anderson, though, time is a little bit more of the essence because he's a pending UFA. Now, the team mentioned here in the latest reports on Anderson from TSN Insider Trading especially is, and Elliot touched on it as well, is the Dallas Stars. Now, we've heard Dallas and Vegas have been the primary two teams that were most interested in his service, and they were the most likely teams that he would be willing to sign a contract extension with. Now, teams could decide that they're willing to obtain him as a rental, and I don't believe he's got trade protection, or if he does, it's modified. I don't believe he's got a full no move. I'd have to check Puckpedia to be certain, but I believe he either has none or maybe it's a small list that's considered a modified no trade. Either way, Dallas and Vegas have been the teams that mainly been mostly mentioned because a lot of teams don't want to pay the big price if they're not going to be able to keep him. So Dallas now has a situation where things have changed. They've lost Tyler Seguin to a long-term injury. He's not expected to play again this year because of the ACL injury. I mean, they probably won't rush into this to want to make sure that they got more information on him to confirm he can't come back, but it doesn't look good. I mean, ACL injuries are not quick at all. And considering the time of the season that we're in, I think a best case scenario is maybe if they were to go to the Stanley Cup final, maybe there's a chance. I'm not even sure what I put those odds at, but we need to get more information on the severity of that injury just to be certain. So that's why I don't think they're going to super jump into this tonight or tomorrow or anything like that. But in the coming weeks, as they get more clarity on Seguin and what he's looking at, just to confirm that he can't come back, they would have a big room in the long-term injury reserve category to be able to acquire a guy like Rasmus Andersson and not have to subtract off their roster because they don't have to make additional space. Now, that makes them more flexible. You don't need salary retention. It's going to be even better for the Flames. And you know what? They can probably make this move without subtracting from the roster because they don't have to. If they've got the assets and draft picks and prospects that are interesting enough to the Flames that they can strike a deal, then that would be more likely a scenario that we would see. Now, on Quinn Hughes, certainly a scenario that Elliot talked more to today, and a lot of people have chimed in on since the reports dropped Saturday night, where Elliot Friedman on the headlines said that the Canucks and the Devils, they've definitely had conversations here, at least one. Nothing is imminent on a trade to send Hughes to New Jersey, but he said that they've definitely had conversations for sure. And then Quinn Hughes made some interesting comments, asked post-game that night about it, and he said, it's not like Jim Fitzy and I jumped on a call. He said, I'm aware of these things can take place, but obviously I wasn't part of it. The fact that he referred to the Devils GM as Fitzy just kind of made a lot of people go, huh. Not to say that most people wouldn't know that that's his nickname, but just an odd choice of words given that he's not on that team and, seems like a very personal thing to say. So with Quinn Hughes, one thing that was discussed is not only are those conversations, something that's happened now, we don't have any kind of confirmation from the Canucks that they've talked to Quinn about his future and that they've gotten certainty that he won't re-sign. But there are some people out there that think that it's pretty much a given that he's not coming back. There was reports and some chatter back around the spring, late spring, early summer, that he had sold his place in Vancouver and that he didn't want to be there anymore. And it certainly caused some stress in the fan base. Of course, nothing was ever confirmed publicly by the player, the team. They're not going to do that anyways, right? I wouldn't expect them to. But there are some people that said that was indeed true. So again, we'll have to wait and see. I don't have the proof at my fingertips that he sold his place. But one thing that was discussed from Friedman was that it's not a given that if he moves this year that it's going to be the Devils. Detroit is very much in the mix. He says that the Red Wings are definitely an interested party. The belief is they've at least checked in, and that if there's a deal there, that if the Canucks wanted to do the deal, that Detroit could pull it off. They must have had some level of conversations for the insiders to have this kind of information, that they've at least discussed what maybe, hypothetically, what the framework will look like. I've seen a report saying that the Red Wings would have to offer Lucas Raymond. And I get it. Quinn Hughes is a really good player, so the fan base is going to want to see a really good player coming back. I just don't think Detroit would do that. But whether they think they're going to want a centerman, so whether it's Danielson or Casper, I think they would have to ask for one of those guys. Maybe they ask for a younger D like an Edmondson. Maybe there's a draft pick. Maybe there's another prospect. Maybe they ask for Sandin Pellikka. I think they would want one of their young centermen, one of their young D, and maybe a high pick. If you look at the Jack Eichel trade, which a lot of people are saying might be the one that ends up being used as a comparable, if this goes down, it might be something closer to that. Now, the other team to watch here is Philly. Some Philly reporters, like I believe it was Anthony DeMarco, said that even though the Flyers wouldn't be necessarily guaranteed to extend Quinn Hughes, that he feels that from what he's been told, that they would be comfortable making a trade knowing that even if they can't extend him, they could bring him and be a part of their team for about a year and a half. Of course, he has an existing relationship with Rick Tocchet from being his coach for a few years. We know they got along really well. Quinn liked him as a coach. Maybe he comes to Philly and they have a chance to convince him that this is the place for him to stay. Even if it's not on an 8-year deal, maybe at some point he signs shorter term and says, okay, I do want to play with my brothers, but I'll put that off a few years. I'm going to stay here for a little while. I don't know. I don't know what's going on inside his head. I'm just guessing here. The Flyers would be open to such a thing because if he doesn't want to extend, they can flip him and get some recouped assets is what was put out there. So again, we will see. Detroit and Philly certainly sounds like with the insider information that's out there, they could be a player here in the Hughes sweepstakes. But there's a lot of people that believe that the Devils would like just to get this done, reunite the three brothers. And now that we know they've had some conversations, well, it's hard to say when those are going to continue. But my personal opinion, this is not based on any intel. This is just my gut feeling from watching the Canucks, listening to Quinn Hughes, and listening to what all these reporters have to say. I think Quinn is checked out. I think he does get traded definitely before his contract's up. I think there's a decent chance it happens this year. Not 100% sold it goes to New Jersey. Maybe he goes somewhere else first. But I do think he leaves Vancouver. To me, I feel like it's heading in that direction. But that's just a personal gut feeling based on my observations. I do not have any intel from anybody with knowledge of the situation to say that is absolutely certain. So let me know what you think on all today's news and rumors in the comments. We will discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. Hopefully my voice is a little bit better in the next one because obviously I'm just getting over a cold and it's a little raspy here. But thanks for watching. Especially if you made it this far with me, and I'll catch you next time.